You can walk past someone freezing in the cold, or you can change your entire life with a single choice. The wind cut through the city like a blade that night, sharp and relentless, carrying the scent of rain-soaked concrete and distant traffic. Under the flickering glow of a bus stop light on 8th Avenue, Chloe Adams pulled her thin coat tighter around her body, her fingers trembling not just from the cold, but from the weight of everything she had left to lose. In her pocket was a single $10 bill, folded twice, soft at the edges from being handled too many times. $10. That was dinner. That was tomorrow. That was survival. She kept her eyes down, watching the puddles ripple under the steady drizzle, trying not to think about the email she'd received an hour earlier. "We regret to inform you." Or the landlord's message waiting unread on her cracked phone. She was 24, broke, and officially out of chances. Then she heard it. "Excuse me." The voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the wind. Chloe looked up. A man stood a few feet away, soaked to the bone, his jacket worn thin, his dark hair clinging to his forehead. There was nothing remarkable about him at first glance, just another face the city had forgotten, but his eyes caught her. Blue, steady, and strangely calm despite everything. "I hate to ask," he said, his voice low, careful, "but I need $10 for a bus ticket. My wallet's gone. I just need to get home." Chloe blinked, her grip tightening inside her pocket. $10. Her last $10. The bus she was waiting for rumbled faintly in the distance, headlights barely visible through the rain. She could pretend she didn't hear him. Most people would. Most people had. She glanced around. No one else was stepping in. No one else even looked. The man didn't move closer, didn't pressure, just stood there, waiting, as if he already expected the answer to be no. Chloe swallowed, her heart pounding louder than the rain. She should say no. She needed that money. She had nothing else. But something about him, the way he asked, the way he didn't beg, the quiet dignity in the middle of his situation, pulled at something deep inside her, something she thought she had already lost. Slowly, almost against her own logic, she reached into her pocket. The bill felt heavier than it should. For a second, she hesitated, her fingers tightening around it, her mind screaming that this was a mistake. Then she stepped forward. "I don't know if this is stupid," she said softly, her voice barely steady, "but I believe you." She placed the $10 bill in his hand. His expression shifted, not relief, not shock, but something quieter, something deeper. He looked at the bill, then back at her, as if memorizing her face. "Thank you," he said, his voice lower now, almost careful. Chloe gave a small nod, stepping back as the bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. She didn't wait for anything else, didn't ask his name, didn't expect to see him again. As she climbed onto the bus, cold and empty-handed, she told herself it didn't matter. It was just $10. Just one small act. Just a moment. But as the bus pulled away and the man remained standing under that flickering light, watching her disappear into the rain, neither of them knew that this was the exact moment everything was about to change. The bus door shut with a hollow hiss, sealing Chloe inside a pocket of artificial warmth that felt almost undeserved as she stood there, damp and empty-handed, watching the city blur past the rain-streaked windows. She slid into a seat near the back, her hands still tingling from the cold, but it was not the cold that stayed with her. It was the absence. The $10 bill was gone, and with it, the fragile sense of control she had been clinging to all day. She stared at her reflection in the glass, faint and distorted by passing headlights, and let out a slow breath. "What did you just do?" she whispered to herself, not in regret, but in disbelief. The answer did not come. Only the quiet hum of the engine and the soft murmur of passengers lost in their own lives. By the time the bus reached her stop, the rain had softened into a thin mist, but the air was still sharp enough to bite. Chloe stepped off, pulling her coat tighter as she made her way down the narrow sidewalk toward the small office building where her interview had been scheduled. The clock above the entrance read 8:57 p.m. She was late. Not by much, but enough. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed. Overhead, casting a pale glow over the nearly empty reception area. The woman behind the desk barely looked up. "Can I help you?" Chloe forced a polite smile, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. "I had an interview scheduled for 9. Chloe Adams." The receptionist typed something quickly, then paused, her expression tightening just slightly. I am sorry. The hiring manager left early. You will need to reschedule. Chloe blinked. I can wait, she said quickly. I just need a few minutes. I came all the way from, you can reschedule, the woman repeated, already turning back to her screen. The finality in her tone left no room for argument. Chloe stood there for a second longer, her chest tightening, before she nodded slowly. Right. Of course. Outside, the city felt colder than before. Not because of the weather, but because something inside her had shifted. She walked without direction for a while, her shoes damp, her stomach tightening with a quiet, persistent hunger she could no longer ignore. Every storefront she passed seemed brighter, warmer, filled with people who did not have to think twice about a $10 decision. By the time she reached her apartment building, her steps had slowed, a quiet dread settling in her chest. The hallway light flickered as she pushed the door open, and there he was. Her landlord leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression already made up. You are late, he said flatly. Chloe swallowed. I know. I was at an interview. I just need a couple more days. I can get you the rent by Friday. He shook his head before she could finish. I already told you. I have someone else ready to take the room. The words landed harder than she expected. Please, she said, her voice quieter now, stripped of any confidence. Just a little more time. But he was already stepping aside, gesturing toward her door. You can pack tonight. Chloe stood there, frozen for a moment, the weight of the day crashing down all at once. The $10. The missed interview. The door closing on the last place she could call hers. She nodded slowly, because there was nothing else left to do, and pushed past him. The room was small, barely more than a bed and a dresser, but it had been hers. Now it felt like something she was already leaving behind. As she packed her few belongings into a worn backpack, her movements were quiet, mechanical. She paused only once, her hand resting on the zipper, as a thought surfaced uninvited. Somewhere out there, a stranger was holding the last thing she had. And for reasons she could not explain, that thought did not feel like loss. It felt like the beginning of something she could not yet see. The first night without a place to go always feels longer than it should, as if time itself slows down just to make sure you feel every second of it. And for Chloe, that night stretched endlessly across the quiet corners of the city. She found herself sitting in a 24-hour public library downtown, tucked between tall shelves filled with books she could not focus on, her backpack clutched close against her chest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. The fluorescent lights hummed softly above, and every now and then a page would turn somewhere in the distance. But otherwise, the world had gone still. She tried to read, tried to distract herself, but her mind kept circling back to the same moment under that flickering bus stop light, to the weight of that $10 bill leaving her hand. It should have felt like a mistake by now. It should have been something she regretted. But it was not. The next morning came too quickly, the library doors opening to a pale gray sky, and a city already rushing forward without her. Chloe stepped outside, her breath visible in the cold air, and began walking with no real destination, just the instinct to keep moving. She stopped at a small diner on the corner of Lexington and 52nd, the smell of coffee and warm food pulling at her senses, but she did not go inside. Instead, she stood there for a moment, watching people through the window, their lives moving in a rhythm she no longer belonged to. Her stomach tightened, but she turned away. By midday, her feet ached, and the city felt larger than ever, each block stretching further than the last. She checked a few job boards, walked into 2 places asking for work, and left both with polite smiles and quiet rejections. We will call you, they said, but she knew they would not. By the afternoon, the sky darkened. Again, clouds rolling in as if the day itself was giving up early. Chloe found herself in a small park, sitting on a cold metal bench, her shoulders hunched against the wind. Around her, people passed by without slowing, their coats thick, their steps purposeful, their lives intact. She watched them, not with envy, but with a quiet distance, like she was already fading out of the same world they lived in. Her hands slipped into her empty pockets, and for the first time, the reality hit fully. She had nothing left. No money, no home, no plan. And yet, beneath all of that, there was still something else. A memory, a face, the man at the bus stop. The way he had looked at her, not with desperation, but with something steady, something almost certain. Chloe shook her head slightly, letting out a soft breath. You are really holding on to that, huh? She murmured to herself, almost amused by her own thoughts. It did not make sense. It was one moment, one stranger, but it stayed. As the evening approached and the temperature dropped again, Chloe stood up from the bench, pulling her coat tighter, preparing for another night without a place to go. What she did not know, what she could not see, was that somewhere across the city, that same $10 bill now rested carefully inside a leather wallet that did not match the image of the man she had met, and the man who held it was no longer standing in the cold. He was watching, waiting, and remembering every detail of the girl who had given him everything when she had nothing. Across the city, far from the cold bench where Chloe sat counting the seconds of another uncertain evening, the man she had helped stepped out of a black sedan that glided silently to the curb in front of a glass tower that stretched into the night sky. The rain had stopped here, as if even the weather respected the quiet authority of the place. He paused for a moment before entering, his hand slipping into his coat pocket, fingers brushing against the folded $10 bill. It was still slightly damp, softened at the edges, and somehow heavier than any amount of money he had handled that day. Inside, the lobby was warm, polished, and quiet, the kind of quiet that came from control, not absence. The marble floors reflected the overhead lights like still water, and a receptionist looked up immediately, her posture straightening the moment she recognized him. "Good evening, Mr. Bennett," she said, her tone professional but edged with respect. Noah Bennett gave a small nod, his expression composed, distant, nothing like the man who had stood in the rain hours earlier. The elevator doors opened without a button pressed, and within seconds, he was ascending, the city shrinking beneath him with each passing floor. When the doors opened again, he stepped into a private office that overlooked the skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a view most people would never see in their lifetime. A man in a tailored suit stood near the desk, tablet in hand, already waiting. "You disappeared again," the man said, not accusing, just observant. The board meeting had to be delayed. Noah removed his coat slowly, placing it over the back of a chair. "Reschedule it," he replied, his voice calm, controlled. "Tomorrow morning." The man hesitated for a fraction of a second before nodding. "Of course." "And the site inspections?" Noah walked past him, stopping at the window, his gaze drifting down toward the streets far below. "Handled." Silence settled for a moment before the assistant spoke again, softer this time. "You found what you were looking for?" Noah did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the $10 bill, smoothing it carefully between his fingers as if it were something fragile. His reflection in the glass stared back at him. Sharp suit, clean lines, everything in place, everything controlled. But his eyes were different now. Focused. Intent. "Not what I was looking for," he said quietly. "Something I did not expect." The assistant's gaze flickered to the bill, confusion crossing his face, but he did not question it. He had worked with Noah long enough to understand that when his boss spoke like that, something had shifted. Noah turned slightly, placing the bill on his desk with more care than he had ever given any contract or document worth millions. "Find her," he said simply. The assistant blinked. "Her." Noah's eyes returned to the city below. "The girl from 8th Avenue. Bus stop near 52nd. Late evening. She has no place to go." The assistant hesitated again, this time more visibly. "Do we have a name?" Noah shook his head once. "No, but you will find her." There was no arrogance in his tone, just certainty. The kind that turned impossible tasks into completed ones. The assistant nodded slowly. "Understood." As he turned to leave, Noah remained by the window, his hands resting lightly against the cool glass, his mind replaying the moment over and over again. The hesitation in her voice, the way she had still stepped forward, the way she had said, "I believe you," as if that belief had cost her everything. Somewhere in the city, she was still out there, facing the consequences of a decision she had made for a stranger. Noah's reflection stared back at him again, but this time, there was something else beneath the surface. Not curiosity, not obligation, something deeper, something personal. And for the first time in a long time, Noah Bennett was not thinking about business or power or control. He was thinking about a girl who had nothing and still chose to give. The next morning arrived without ceremony. Just a slow fade from darkness into a pale gray sky that offered no warmth, no promise, only another day to endure. And Chloe woke on that same park bench with stiff fingers and a quiet ache in her back, the kind that settled deep and refused to leave. For a moment, she did not move, her eyes fixed on the bare branches above her, listening to the distant hum of the city already in motion, people heading somewhere, becoming something, while she remained suspended in place, caught between what she had been and what she no longer was. She exhaled slowly and sat up, pulling her coat tighter as a breeze cut across the park, sharper than the night before, as if the city had decided to test her limits. Her stomach tightened again, a hollow reminder that she had not eaten since yesterday morning, and this time, there was no distraction strong enough to ignore it. She stood, her movements slower now, heavier, but there was still a quiet determination in the way she adjusted her backpack, in the way she forced her shoulders back, as if posture alone could hold her together. One more day, she murmured under her breath, not as a plan, but as a promise to herself. She walked toward the main street, blending into the early crowd, her presence unnoticed, invisible in the flow of people who had somewhere to be. A coffee shop on the corner opened its doors, the warm scent spilling onto the sidewalk, drawing her in despite herself, and for a brief moment, she stepped inside, the heat wrapping around her like something she had almost forgotten. She stood in line, hands tucked into her sleeves, watching as people ahead of her ordered without hesitation, lattes, pastries, small luxuries that once felt normal and now seemed impossibly distant. When it was her turn, she hesitated, her mind blank, because there was nothing she could ask for, nothing she could afford, and the silence stretched just long enough for the cashier to look up, waiting. Chloe gave a small, apologetic smile and stepped aside, pretending she had forgotten something, stepping back into the cold before the moment could turn into something heavier. Outside, she kept walking, each step carrying her further into a day that offered no clear direction, only movement. Across the city, inside a conference room lined with glass and quiet authority, Noah Bennett stood at the head of a long table, his presence commanding attention without effort as voices around him faded the moment he spoke. "We are not delaying this project again," he said, his tone calm but final, his eyes scanning the room with a focus that left no room for disagreement. Numbers were discussed, timelines adjusted, decisions made in minutes that would affect thousands. But even as he spoke, part of his mind remained elsewhere, anchored to a different reality entirely. A soft knock interrupted the meeting, subtle but deliberate, and his assistant stepped inside, tablet in hand, waiting just long enough to be acknowledged. Noah's gaze shifted, just slightly, and that was enough. "Continue," he said to the room before stepping aside, lowering his voice as the assistant approached. "We found her." The words landed quietly, but they carried weight. Noah's expression did not change, but something in his posture did, a subtle shift, like a decision already forming before the details were even spoken. "Where?" he asked. The assistant glanced at the screen. "She was seen this morning near Lexington and 52nd. No fixed address. She spent the night in a public park." A pause. "She is currently walking. No destination." For a moment, Noah said nothing, his gaze unfocused as if mapping the distance between where he stood and where she was. Then he nodded once. "Prepare the car." The assistant hesitated. "Should we approach directly?" Noah's eyes lifted, steady, precise. No, a brief pause, then, "Not yet." He turned back toward the glass walls of the conference room, where executives waited, unaware that the most important decision of his day had already been made outside of it. Somewhere just a few blocks away, Chloe continued walking through the city, unaware that the man she had helped was no longer a stranger in the crowd, but someone moving carefully, deliberately, into her world, not as the man she met in the rain, but as someone who could change everything if she would let him. The black sedan moved slowly along Lexington Avenue, blending into traffic with quiet precision, its tinted windows reflecting a city that had no idea it was being watched. And inside, Noah Bennett sat still, his gaze fixed not on the skyline he owned, but on the sidewalk where a single figure moved against the current of the morning rush. "That is her," the assistant said softly from the front seat, though he already knew. Noah did not answer. He did not need to. Chloe walked with a steady pace that did not match her situation, her shoulders slightly tense, her hands tucked into her sleeves, her eyes focused forward as if she had trained herself not to look too closely at anything she could not have. There was something deliberate in her movement, not aimless, but not guided either, like she was choosing to keep going simply because stopping was not an option. Noah watched her for a long moment, taking in every detail, not with curiosity, but with recognition. This was the same girl who had stood in the rain, who had hesitated, who had still stepped forward. The same girl who had said, "I believe you," without knowing what that belief would cost her. "Pull over," he said quietly. The car slowed, easing toward the curb a few yards ahead of her, stopping without drawing attention. "Now?" the assistant asked, glancing back briefly. Noah shook his head once. "Wait." Outside, Chloe passed storefront after storefront, her reflection flickering in the glass for a second at a time, each one showing the same thing: a girl trying to hold herself together in a world that was not making it easy. She paused briefly at a bulletin board near a subway entrance, scanning the paper listings pinned across it: job postings, room shares, opportunities that all seemed just out of reach. Her eyes moved quickly, searching, calculating, hoping, and then slowly, they dimmed. Nothing. Again. She stepped back, exhaling quietly, and turned away, unaware that just across the street, a pair of eyes had not left her since the moment she came into view. Noah's hand rested lightly against the door handle, but he did not open it. Not yet. This moment mattered. Timing mattered. If he stepped out now, if he approached her as the man she had seen in the rain, everything would collapse into confusion. She would not understand. She might walk away, and for reasons he could not fully explain, that was not a risk he was willing to take. "Circle the block," he said instead. The assistant nodded immediately, pulling back into traffic, the car moving forward as if nothing had happened. Chloe continued walking, her pace slowing slightly now, fatigue beginning to show in the small details, the way her steps were not as firm, the way her shoulders dipped just a little more with each passing minute. She reached a crosswalk and stopped, waiting as cars passed, the signal counting down in bright red numbers. 30 seconds. 29. 28. She shifted her weight slightly, glancing down for a moment, and in that second, she looked smaller than before, not physically, but in the way the world pressed in around her. Across the intersection, the black sedan reappeared, coming to a smooth stop at the light, just one lane over. Inside, Noah watched her again, closer now, clearer, the distance between them reduced to a matter of feet instead of blocks. The light changed. People began to move. Chloe stepped forward with the crowd, crossing without looking up, unaware that the man whose life she had altered with a single act of kindness was now right beside her, separated only by glass, timing, and a decision that was about to change everything again. Noah's fingers tightened slightly against the door handle as the car rolled forward with the flow of traffic, his voice low, steady, but carrying a weight that had nothing to do with business. "Next stop," he said, his eyes never leaving her reflection in the side mirror. "We do not." "Wait." The sedan slowed again, this time not blending into traffic, but pulling deliberately toward the curb just ahead of Chloe, its presence subtle but intentional, like a quiet interruption in the rhythm of the city, and before the engine fully settled into stillness, the rear door opened. Noah stepped out. The difference was immediate. Gone was the soaked jacket, the tired posture, the quiet anonymity of the man from the rain. In its place stood someone composed, sharp, every detail controlled, from the tailored suit to the calm authority in the way he carried himself. The city did not pause for him, but it adjusted. People glanced, then looked again, sensing something without knowing why. Chloe did not notice at first. She kept walking, her eyes forward, her pace steady, until a voice cut through the noise just enough to reach her. "Chloe." She stopped. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but with a small hesitation, as if her name had been pulled from somewhere it did not belong. Slowly, she turned. For a second, her expression held only confusion. Then recognition flickered, uncertain, searching, trying to reconcile two completely different images into one person. The man in front of her stood a few feet away, hands relaxed at his sides, his gaze steady, familiar in a way that did not match his appearance. "You," she said softly, the word trailing off as her eyes moved over him, taking in the suit, the car, the difference. That is not. She stopped again, her thoughts catching up to the moment. Noah gave a slight nod, not smiling, not apologizing, just acknowledging the distance between what she had seen and what stood before her now. I owe you an explanation, he said, his voice calm, measured, the same voice she had heard in the rain, only clearer now, stronger. Chloe let out a small breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yeah, she said quietly. I think you do. For a moment, neither of them moved. The city flowed around them, footsteps, conversations, engines, all continuing as if this moment did not exist, but for Chloe, everything narrowed to the space between them. Who are you? She asked, her tone not accusing, but careful, like she was choosing each word with intention. Noah held her gaze. My name is Noah Bennett. The name meant nothing to her at first. It was just a name, another stranger in a city full of them. But something in the way he said it, the weight behind it, made her pause. Okay, she replied slowly. And a black car door closed behind him, and the assistant stepped forward just enough to be seen, not enough to interrupt. Chloe's eyes flickered in that direction, then back to Noah, her awareness sharpening. Noah reached into his pocket, the same pocket where the $10 bill had rested since the night before, and for a brief second, his fingers brushed against it again before he pulled out something else. A card. He held it out to her, not forcing it, just offering. Chloe hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing lightly against his as she did. Her eyes dropped to the card, scanning the clean lettering, the name, the title, the company beneath it. The moment stretched. Then her expression changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in layers, confusion giving way to realization, realization to disbelief. You are, she began, then stopped, looking up at him again as if the confirmation might change if she said it out loud. Noah did not fill in the blank. He let her arrive there on her own. Chloe shook her head slightly, a quiet breath escaping her as the weight of it settled. So the bus stopped, she said, her voice softer now. That was not real. Noah's gaze did not waver. It was real, he said, just not the whole truth. Silence followed, heavier this time, filled with everything she was trying to process. The cold, the hunger, the $10, the moment she thought was just a passing act of kindness. Why? She asked finally, the question simple, but carrying everything beneath it. Noah took a small step closer, not enough to close the distance completely, but enough to show that this was not a coincidence. Because what you did, he said quietly, was not something people do when they have nothing. Chloe looked at him, her grip tightening slightly on the card in her hand, her world shifting in a way she had not prepared for. And for the first time since she stepped onto that bus, she realized that the moment she thought she had left behind had been following her all along. Chloe's fingers tightened slightly around the card as if it might disappear if she loosened her grip, her eyes still locked on the name printed in clean, confident letters. And for a moment she said nothing, not because she had no questions, but because she had too many and none of them seemed simple anymore. The city noise pressed in again, distant but constant, reminding her that everything around them was still moving forward even as her own world felt like it had stopped. So what does that mean? She finally asked, her voice quieter now, more guarded, as if she was trying to protect something inside herself that had already taken too many hits. Noah studied her for a second, not her appearance, not the situation, but her reaction, the way she held herself, the way she did not step closer or further away, just stayed exactly where she was, balanced between disbelief and something else he recognized. It means, he said carefully, that I am offering you a chance. Chloe let out a small breath, her eyes narrowing just slightly, not in anger, but in caution. A chance, she repeated, as if testing the words before accepting them. Like what exactly? Noah did not rush the answer. He reached into his coat again, this time pulling out nothing, just letting his hand rest there for a moment as if grounding himself before speaking. A job, he said. A place to stay. Stability. The words were simple, direct, but they landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. Chloe blinked, her expression shifting again, this time not to confusion, but to something sharper, something more immediate. No, she said almost instantly, the response coming before she could even fully think it through. Noah did not react, did not interrupt, just watched as she continued. I did not give you that money so you could come back and fix my life, she added, her voice steady, but carrying an edge now, a quiet pride pushing through everything else. That was not the deal. There it was. The line. The thing he had expected, but still needed to hear. Noah nodded once, acknowledging it without pushing against it. I know, he said. This is not repayment. Chloe shook her head slightly, her grip tightening on the card again. Then what is it? For a second, Noah did not answer, and in that pause, something shifted, not in the situation, but in the space between them. He took a small step closer, not enough to close the distance entirely, but enough to make his words feel more personal, less like an offer and more like a decision. It is recognition, he said quietly. Chloe's brows drew together slightly, the word not landing the way the others had. Recognition? Noah nodded. You made a choice that most people would not make, he continued, his voice steady, not dramatic, just honest. You gave when you had nothing. That tells me more about who you are than any resume ever could. Chloe looked at him, really looked this time, not at the suit, not at the car, but at him, searching for something that would make this easier to categorize, easier to dismiss. But there was nothing performative in his expression, no hint that this was a game or a test anymore. And you think that means I should just, she gestured slightly, her voice trailing off as she struggled to find the right word. Step into your world. Noah did not hesitate this time. I think it means you deserve a better one. Silence followed again, but this time it was different, less heavy, more uncertain, like something was beginning to open rather than close. Chloe looked down at the card in her hand, then back at him, her thoughts moving quickly behind her eyes, weighing pride against reality, independence against survival. And what happens if I say no? She asked finally, her voice softer now, but still firm. Noah held her gaze without hesitation. Then nothing changes, he said simply. You walk away, and I do not follow. The answer was immediate, clear, and for a moment, that alone shifted something in her expression. He was not forcing this. He was not taking control. He was leaving the choice exactly where it belonged. With her. Chloe exhaled slowly, the cold air brushing against her face as she stood there, caught between two versions of her life, one she already knew and one she could not yet see. And for the first time since everything had fallen apart, the decision in front of her was not about what she had lost, but about what she might be willing to risk to gain something more. Chloe did not answer right away, and that silence said more than any immediate response could have, her eyes dropping briefly to the card in her hand before lifting again to meet his, as if she was trying to see past everything else and find something real enough to trust. The wind picked up slightly, brushing past them, carrying the distant sound of a passing siren and the steady rhythm of a city that never paused for decisions like this. She shifted her weight, her fingers loosening just slightly around the card, and for a moment, she looked like she might hand it back. A better world, she repeated quietly, almost to herself, as if testing how it sounded out loud. Then she let out a small breath, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. You make it sound simple. Noah did not interrupt. He knew it was not. Chloe glanced past him briefly, her eyes landing on the car, the assistant standing just far enough away to give them space. Everything about the scene reinforcing the gap between where she stood and where he lived. People like you, she continued, her voice steady again. You do not just offer things like that without expecting something in return. It was not an accusation. It was experience. Noah held her gaze, his expression unchanged. I expect you to show up, he said. That is all. Chloe's brows furrowed slightly. Show up. For the opportunity, he clarified. For yourself. The answer was simple, but it did not feel like a negotiation. It felt like a line drawn clearly in front of her. Chloe looked down again, her thoughts moving faster now, weighing every angle, every risk, every version of what this could turn into. Pride told her to walk away. Logic told her this was not something that happened twice. Reality reminded her that she had nowhere to go. Her fingers tightened again, then slowly, deliberately, she slipped the card into the front pocket of her backpack instead of handing it back. The movement was small, almost unnoticeable, but it changed everything. Noah saw it. He did not react outwardly, but something in his posture shifted, just slightly, as if a decision had just been confirmed. Chloe lifted her eyes to his again. One condition, she said, her tone firm now, grounded in something she was not willing to compromise. Noah nodded once. Name it. No special treatment, she said. If I do this, I earn it. I do. Not want people looking at me like I am there because of you. There was no hesitation in her voice now, only clarity. Noah studied her for a second, then gave a small nod. You will not be, he said. Your position will be earned, not given. Chloe held his gaze for another moment, searching for any sign that this was just another polished promise, but there was nothing uncertain in his expression. Just certainty, just control. And strangely, that made it easier to believe. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing just a fraction for the first time since he had stepped out of that car. Okay, she said quietly. It was not dramatic. It was not triumphant. But it was real. Noah turned slightly, gesturing toward the car. Then let us begin. Chloe hesitated for half a second, her eyes flickering toward the street behind her, the direction she had been walking, the version of her life she was about to leave behind. Then she stepped forward. The assistant moved quickly to open the door, and for a moment, Chloe paused again, looking at the interior, clean, warm, completely unfamiliar. Then she got in. The door closed softly behind her, sealing out the noise of the city, and as the car pulled away from the curb, Chloe felt the shift immediately, not just in her surroundings, but in something deeper, something she could not yet define. Across from her, Noah sat quietly, his gaze steady, not watching her like a subject, but like someone who had made a choice and was now committed to seeing it through. Outside, the city continued as it always had, but inside that car, everything had already begun to change. The car moved smoothly through the city, the hum of the engine steady and quiet, so different from the chaos Chloe had been walking through just minutes ago. And for the first time in what felt like days, she sat still, not because she had nowhere to go, but because she was being taken somewhere she did not yet understand. Her hands rested lightly on her backpack in her lap, her fingers tracing the worn fabric absent-mindedly, grounding herself in something familiar as everything else shifted around her. She glanced out the window, watching the streets change, the buildings growing taller, cleaner, more polished, each block a subtle reminder that she was crossing into a world she had only ever seen from the outside. Across from her, Noah remained composed, his posture relaxed but precise, as if every movement he made had already been considered before it happened. He did not fill the silence, and strangely, that made it easier for her to sit in it. After a few moments, Chloe finally spoke, her voice quieter now, less defensive, but still careful. Where are we going? Noah met her gaze briefly before answering. Somewhere you can start over, he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight, and Chloe felt it settle somewhere deep, somewhere she had not allowed herself to think about yet. The car slowed as it turned onto a quieter street, lined with modern buildings that reflected the morning light in clean, sharp lines, and within seconds, it came to a stop in front of a glass entrance framed by subtle steel accents. There was no sign screaming for attention, no need for it. The place spoke for itself. The door opened, and the assistant stepped out first, moving around to Chloe's side, opening her door with the same quiet efficiency. For a second, she hesitated again, looking out at the building, then back at Noah. This is where you work? She asked. Noah gave a slight nod. This is where you will. The statement was not forceful, but it was clear, and for a brief moment, Chloe felt that same flicker of doubt again, the question of whether she belonged here at all. But she stepped out anyway. The air felt different here, cleaner somehow, quieter, as if even the noise of the city respected the boundaries of this place. Inside, the lobby opened up into a wide, polished space, the floors reflecting the soft lighting above, people moving with purpose but without chaos, their conversations low, controlled, professional. Chloe slowed slightly as she stepped in, her eyes taking everything in, the scale of it, the order, the difference. She was aware of herself in a way she had not been on the street, aware of her coat, her worn shoes, the way she did not quite match the environment around her. A few people glanced at her, then quickly looked away, but not before she caught the subtle shift in their expressions, curiosity, confusion, something unspoken. Noah walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, his presence steady, unaffected by the attention, as if none of it mattered. They approached the front desk, and the receptionist looked up, her expression changing instantly the moment she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice precise, respectful. Chloe felt it again. That shift, the confirmation of who he was in a way that no business card could fully carry. Noah gave a brief nod before speaking. "This is Chloe Adams," he said. No introduction beyond that. No explanation. Just her name placed into the space as if it already belonged there. The receptionist's eyes moved to Chloe, her expression adjusting quickly, professional again, but with a hint of something else beneath it. "Welcome," she said politely. The word hung in the air for a moment. Simple, but loaded with meaning Chloe was still trying to understand. As they moved past the desk toward the elevators, Chloe felt the weight of everything settle more clearly than before, not just the opportunity, but the expectations, the unseen lines she would have to navigate, the silent judgments she could already feel beginning to form. She glanced at Noah again, searching for something, reassurance, maybe, or just confirmation that this was real. He met her gaze briefly, his expression calm, steady, as if to say that this was only the beginning. And as the elevator doors closed, sealing them into a space that would take her even further from the life she had known just hours ago, Chloe realized that stepping into this world was not the hardest part. Staying in it would be. The elevator doors closed with a soft, almost silent glide, sealing Chloe into a space that felt too polished, too controlled, as it began its smooth ascent, and for a moment, she could hear nothing but the quiet hum of the machinery and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. The mirrored walls reflected her from every angle, forcing her to see herself the way this world might see her, her worn coat, her tired eyes, the faint signs of a life that did not match the place she had just entered. She shifted slightly, adjusting the strap of her backpack, grounding herself again, refusing to shrink under her own reflection. Noah stood beside her, not speaking, not watching her directly, but present in a way that did not add pressure, only awareness. The numbers above the door changed. Steadily, each floor pulling her further away from everything she had known just that morning. When the doors opened, the difference was immediate. The space beyond was quieter, more exclusive, the kind of floor that did not need to announce its importance because it was understood. Large windows stretched along one side, letting in natural light that softened the clean lines of the office, and people moved here with a different kind of focus, less hurried, more precise. Conversations were quieter, but sharper, decisions made with fewer words. As Chloe stepped out, she felt it again, that subtle shift in attention, not overt, not obvious, but present. People noticed. They always did. Noah led her down a hallway lined with glass offices, each one revealing glimpses of a world she had never been part of. Meetings in progress, screens filled with data, people speaking in tones that carried authority without raising volume. They stopped in front of a door that remained closed until Noah approached, then opened automatically as if it had been waiting. Inside was a workspace, clean, organized, minimal, but not empty. A desk, a chair, a computer, everything set with intention, but nothing excessive. Chloe paused at the threshold, her eyes scanning the room, trying to understand what it meant before stepping in. "This is yours," Noah said simply. Chloe blinked, looking from the desk to him, then back again. "Mine?" she repeated, the word feeling unfamiliar in this context. Noah nodded once. "For now," he added. "What you do with it determines what comes next." Chloe stepped inside slowly, her fingers brushing lightly against the edge of the desk, as if confirming that it was real, that this was not something temporary she would wake up from. The surface was smooth, cool under her touch, untouched, waiting. She turned back toward him, her expression more focused now, less uncertain, but still carrying the weight of everything that had led her here. "What exactly am I supposed to do?" she asked. Noah did not move further into the room. He remained near the door, giving her space, not stepping into what he had just offered. "You start at the foundation," he said. "Community outreach. Operations. You will learn how things work before you decide where you fit." Chloe nodded slowly, absorbing the words, the structure, the expectation. It was not charity. It was not a handout. It was a path, and she would have to walk it. "And the people here?" she asked, her voice quieter, more thoughtful now. "They are not going to see it that way." Noah's gaze met hers, steady, direct. "No," he said. They will not. There was no attempt to soften it, no reassurance that things would be easy. Just truth. Chloe let out a slow breath, her shoulders straightening slightly, not in comfort, but in preparation. Good, she said after a moment. Noah's brow lifted just slightly, the smallest shift in his expression. Chloe met his gaze without hesitation this time. If they doubt me, she continued, then I will have something to prove. For the first time since he had stepped out of that car, something almost like approval flickered in Noah's eyes. Not dramatic, not obvious, but there. Then you understand, he said quietly. Chloe turned back toward the desk, her hand resting on its surface again. But this time, it was different. Not tentative, not uncertain. This time, it felt like a beginning she was choosing, not one being handed to her. And somewhere beyond the glass walls, beyond the quiet conversations and controlled movements, the city continued to move forward, unaware that in this small, quiet room, a different kind of change had just begun, one built not on status or power, but on a single moment of kindness that refused to stay small. The first few days passed in a rhythm Chloe was not used to, structured, intentional. Every hour accounted for in ways that made her feel both grounded and exposed at the same time. And while the space around her remained polished and controlled, the atmosphere beneath it carried something sharper, something less welcoming than it appeared on the surface. She learned quickly, not because it was easy, but because she had to. Every system, every process, every quiet expectation placed on her came without explanation, as if she was meant to already understand, and when she did not, she noticed it immediately in the subtle pauses, the exchanged glances, the conversations that stopped just half a second too late when she walked by. That is her. She overheard once, not directed at her, but not hidden either. The one he brought in. The words were soft, but they carried enough weight to settle into her thoughts long after the moment passed. Chloe did not respond. She did not confront it. Instead, she worked. She stayed later than she needed to, arrived earlier than anyone expected, asked questions when she had to, and listened when she could, absorbing everything with a quiet determination that did not need to be announced. But the distance remained. It showed in the way conversations shifted when she joined them, in the way her ideas were acknowledged politely but not fully considered, in the way her presence was tolerated more than accepted. One afternoon, during a small team meeting, that distance became something clearer. We have reviewed the outreach proposals, a senior coordinator said, her tone neutral but firm, her eyes moving briefly toward Chloe before returning to the rest of the room. We will proceed with the existing plan. Chloe glanced down at her notes, then back up, her mind moving quickly. She hesitated for a second, then spoke. There is a gap in the distribution zones, she said, her voice steady, controlled. If we adjust the route by 2 blocks west, we can reach an additional 40 to 50 people without increasing cost. The room went quiet, not because of what she said, but because she said it. The coordinator's expression did not change, but there was a brief pause before she responded. We have already finalized the plan, she said. We will review adjustments next cycle. It was a dismissal, clean and professional, but unmistakable. Chloe nodded once, not pushing further, not showing reaction, but inside, something shifted, not doubt, but clarity. This was the test. Not the work itself, but the space around it. Later that evening, long after most of the office had emptied, Chloe remained at her desk, the soft glow of her screen reflecting in the glass walls around her. She pulled up the data again, running through the numbers, mapping the routes, checking every variable twice, then a third time. It was not about being right. It was about being undeniable. Across the building, in an office that overlooked the entire floor, Noah stood quietly, his gaze moving across the dimly lit space until it settled on the one desk that was still occupied. He did not interrupt. He did not step in. He watched, not to judge, but to understand. Chloe leaned back slightly, her eyes scanning the final version of her proposal, every detail aligned, every assumption supported, every outcome calculated. She saved the file, her fingers pausing for just a second before sending it through the internal system, not to the coordinator, but to the full review channel, where decisions could not be quietly overlooked. Then she closed her laptop, exhaling slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a fraction. Tomorrow would not be easier. She knew that. but it would be different. And for the first time since she stepped into this world, Chloe was no longer trying to fit into it. She was beginning to shape her place within it. The next morning did not arrive quietly. It arrived with attention, with movement, with a subtle shift in the energy of the entire floor that Chloe could feel the moment she stepped out of the elevator. And this time, the glances were not quick or uncertain. They lingered, followed her, measured her in a way that was no longer hidden behind polite professionalism. She walked toward her desk at the same steady pace she had learned to keep, her posture unchanged, her focus forward, but she felt it, the difference, the awareness that something had already happened before she even logged in. Her screen lit up with notifications, more than usual, messages flagged, threads active, and at the center of it all was the proposal she had sent the night before. It had been opened, reviewed, forwarded, discussed. Chloe did not react immediately. She set her bag down, took a slow breath, and opened the file again, her eyes scanning the numbers she already knew by memory, grounding herself in the work, not the reaction to it. A voice broke through the quiet tension around her. Chloe. She looked up. The same senior coordinator stood a few feet away, her expression composed, but different now, less dismissive, more deliberate. We need to talk. The words were simple, but they carried a different tone than before. Chloe stood, nodding once, and followed her into the conference room where the same table, the same chairs, the same controlled environment now held a different weight. A few others were already there, their attention shifting as she entered, not with dismissal this time, but with curiosity, something closer to evaluation than judgment. The coordinator gestured toward a screen where Chloe's proposal was displayed, clean, detailed, undeniable. We ran your adjustments, she said, her voice steady, professional, but with a hint of something else beneath it. The numbers hold. Chloe said nothing, her eyes moving to the screen, then back to the room, waiting. The coordinator continued. We implemented your route this morning. A pause. 47 additional individuals reached. No increase in cost. The room remained quiet, but the silence was no longer empty. It carried recognition. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Chloe felt it settle, not as validation from them, but as confirmation for herself. She had been right. Not by chance, by effort. We are updating the model, the coordinator added, and you will be leading the next phase. That landed differently. Chloe's brows lifted slightly, not in disbelief, but in the quiet realization that the line had shifted. Understood, she replied, her voice calm, grounded, exactly as it had been when no one was listening. Across the room, a few heads nodded, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. The meeting moved forward, discussions continuing, but this time, when Chloe spoke, the pauses were gone. The room listened. Later that day, as the office settled back into its usual rhythm, Chloe returned to her desk, the same desk that had felt uncertain just days ago, and sat down with a different sense of presence. Not louder, not more visible, but more certain. Across the floor, behind glass walls that reflected everything without revealing much, Noah stood once again, watching, not the outcome, but the process, the way she carried herself, the way she did not change under pressure, the way she earned what was given without ever asking for it. His gaze shifted briefly to his desk, where, placed carefully near the edge, the same $10 bill remained, unchanged, a quiet reminder of the moment that had started everything. Outside, the city moved forward as it always did, unaware of the small shifts happening inside a single building, shifts that did not come from power or position, but from a choice made in the rain, from a belief given without guarantee, from a girl who had nothing and still chose to give. And now, standing in a place she had once thought impossible to enter, Chloe was no longer defined by what she lacked, but by what she brought with her, something no title, no wealth, no system could replicate. Something real, something earned. And for the first time, she was not just surviving the world around her. She was becoming part of it on her own terms. A struggling young woman gives her last $10 to a stranger on a cold city night, not knowing that the man she helps is a powerful CEO millionaire whose life is about to change just as much as hers. What begins as a simple act of kindness quickly unfolds into one of the most emotional millionaire stories where pride, survival, and opportunity collide in a modern American city. as the poor girl faces homelessness, rejection, and the harsh reality of starting over with nothing. The billionaire man watches from a distance, moved by a rare kind of integrity he has not seen in years, turning this encounter into one of the most compelling millionaire stories about recognizing true character beyond status. When their paths cross again, the shocking reveal of his identity transforms everything. But instead of offering charity, the wealthy CEO gives her a chance to earn her place, creating tension, doubt, and a powerful internal conflict that defines the heart of great millionaire stories. Stepping into a world she never belonged to, the young woman must face judgment, skepticism, and silent rejection from those who believe she does not deserve to be there. Yet through determination and intelligence, she proves her value, making this one of the most inspiring millionaire stories about rising through merit and resilience. As the story unfolds, both the billionaire man and the poor girl are changed by that single moment in the rain, showing that true leadership is not about wealth, but about recognizing worth. And true love is built not on status, but on actions, making this unforgettable journey stand out among millionaire stories that celebrate authenticity, dignity, and the power of a single selfless choice. Character 1. 24-year-old white American woman, fair skin, tired but kind eyes, slightly messy brown hair, wearing worn coat and simple casual clothes, front-facing portrait, realistic lighting, emotional cinematic tone, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, natural urban setting. Character 2. 35-year-old white American billionaire CEO, sharp jawline, composed expression, short, neatly styled dark hair, wearing tailored black suit and white shirt, front-facing portrait, confident. Posture, cinematic realistic lighting, no cartoon, no CGI, no illustration, luxury urban background.